MCO season is here, and that means that we are all suddenly in need of our own personal computers. But fear not, I'm going to show you how I got a good performing laptop for a cheap price, and also give you some tips on how to do it yourself. First off is to either find a desktop with at least a 2nd generation Core i3 or a laptop with a 2nd generation Core i5. This will give us at least 2 cores and 4 threads to work with, and when paired with enough RAM and an SSD, is more than enough to take on work or schooling from home tasks, assuming of course that you work with Word documents, video calling and PowerPoint. I was able to get my hands on an ASUS laptop that was in fairly good condition with an i5 3337U and also a GT 720M GPU, which will make light gaming definitely possible. I did get this from a friend, but the market price for one of these used is around 1,000 ringgit. Everything from turning it on to just browsing around the desktop felt slow, no thanks to the aging hard drive that's still in this machine. It was at this point that I noticed that the battery was no longer holding a charge either. Turning it off and over to remove the bottom panel screws, I realized that one of the screw standoffs were broken. There was also a missing screw underneath the battery. Now is also a good time to remove the old hard drive that is inside the laptop. Only 3 screws hold it in place. With the screws out, I use a prying pick and my nails to carefully pry the top cover off, making sure not to break any of the fragile clips that hold it in place. It took some time, but I eventually got it off. Before removing it completely, there are just 3 cables for the trackpad, keyboard and power button that need to be disconnected. Now we can remove the screw holding in the DVD drive, then the rest of the screws holding in the motherboard. Before actually removing the motherboard, I have to disconnect the daughterboard flex cable and also the monitor cable, which is lightly adhered to the board. Under which I found yet another screw. Next out is the power cable, when I also realized that there were 2 more screws securing in the fan and just 1 more down in the corner. The board can now be slowly taken out, making sure to disconnect the Wi-Fi antenna and the speaker cable underneath the board. The fan cable can just be disconnected and I will proceed to unscrewing the heat pipes covering the GPU and CPU. These kinds of screws strip very easily, so when unscrewing, I like to put more vertical pressure down on the screws while turning the driver. With the heatsink removed, I use tissue to carefully clean off the old dried up thermal paste, making sure not to crack the die or knock off any of the SMT components. Since I didn't have a brush handy, I just used a powerful vacuum to suck out the dust from the fans and the heatsink. Unfortunately, I lost the footage of replacing the thermal paste, but this Cooler Master stuff was what I used, and I made sure to screw the heatsink back in a cross pattern as to apply even pressure to the die. Try not to tighten too tightly as the old screw standoffs tend to break off easily. The fans can now be connected back as well. While I had everything out, I vacuumed the casing as well as the insides of the hinges, and also took a look at the loose Ethernet cover. The plastic clip holding in the spring has broken, so I just decided to remove the spring completely. The motherboard can now be put back into place, making sure to connect back all the cables as I go along. Instead of putting back the original hard drive, I will be replacing it with a brand new SSD to greatly improve the usability of the laptop. It also makes sure that future data can be stored reliably, as used hard drives and SSDs have a high failure rate. I just need to transfer the SSD into the old hard drive casing. To bring it up to modern spec, I also bought a 4GB stick of RAM to bring it up to today's minimum requirements of 8GB. While screwing back the access cover, I realized the reason the screw didn't sit properly was because it was actually for the hole underneath the battery, and so I put that back into its right place. Now is also a good time to put in the brand new battery, which just locks into place. I used Arch Eraser to fill in the space of the missing screw and also to hold the access cover in place, but I will replace it with a proper screw once I'm able to find it. Since the external of the laptop was in good condition, I just wiped it down with a damp cloth to get rid of the small scratches and dirt marks. Trying to boot it up for the first time resulted in nothing happening even after plugging in the charger. I tried to recall whether I had connected the power button back, or whether I had messed up one of the cable. But after reseating the RAM, the laptop booted right up. I can now use the USB boot media to install the latest version of Windows 10. The OEM license will automatically be carried over, so I will not need to worry about that. With all the drivers installed, I can now show you the performance of this new old machine. 4K video playback on YouTube is a bit choppy, but 1440p plays smoothly, which is more than enough given that this is a 720p display. General smoothness around the desktop is also much better than previously. It is also able to easily manage multiple Chrome tabs smoothly. Another plus is that this laptop's keyboard is from an era that normally have much longer travel distances, which makes typing much more enjoyable. Normally, restored laptops like these are more meant for light work, but since this particular one does come with a graphics card, let's see how it does in some lighter games. Minecraft at medium does a decent job putting out 30 to 40 frames per second, occasionally dropping down to the low 20s. Definitely playable for such a casual game. Another light game I tried is CSGO. At low settings 720p, the game does get around 30 to 40 frames, which is fine for anyone trying out the game casually, but definitely not suitable for anyone wanting to play the game competitively. With that said, the project is completed, and I hope I've shown how easy and, more importantly, how cheap it can be to procure a computer for anyone in need during this online era. Once again, I'll be putting any listings I find for laptops like these in the video description if anyone else wants to give it a go.